Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today we're going to talk a bit about Damian Lillard. Now, about a couple of weeks ago, Dame requested a trade, as I'm sure you all know, and of course, this was a big moment in the NBA world. It seemed like for a while that Dame could potentially ask for a trade or get dealt at any moment, but it had never happened. And it was kind of annoying at that point, you know, the constant back and forth of, will the Blazers trade Dame this offseason? Will he request a trade? Him talking about not wanting to run from the grind, but then saying on podcast, if I were to be traded or asked to be traded, these are the specific destinations I would want to go to. Like, there was a lot of stuff surrounding it. It was kind of annoying with all the rumors, with him saying, I want them to build a contender around me, despite it seeming basically impossible for them to do so. And then the Blazers saying we want to keep Dame, but consistently bring in young players that Dame didn't seem to want on the roster. And so finally, when the trade request came around, I was super excited. I was like, okay, finally this thing's over. Dame's going to get traded to one of a number of destinations. The Blazers can now move on to their new rebuild with Scoot, with Simons, whatever they get from the Dame trade, Shade and Sharp. They're in a great position, and Dame can go to a new spot, try and compete for a championship, and kind of shake up the NBA. It's always fun to see these superstar trades go down. So I was super excited, but a couple of weeks later, I'm completely over this thing. I just want to see Dame get traded because while I thought some of the narratives and dialogue would stop around Dame and the Blazers when the trade request happened, instead it has ramped up exponentially. So let's go back and talk about why this has happened and kind of some of the discourse surrounding it at the moment. When Dame made the trade request, there were a few teams listed by like Woj, Shams, and other sources. Chris Haynes, who is kind of the in-tune guy mostly with Dame, it seems like they're pretty good friends, I believe. There were a couple of teams that were listed as potential destinations, including like the Sixers, the Clippers, the Nets, the Knicks, even the Jazz came up a couple of times, and the Miami Heat. Those were just some teams that were rumored to be somewhat interested in him and had decent enough packages. But while a number of teams' names came up, it was reported pretty quickly that Dame really prioritized wanting to go to Miami. That was the destination that he wanted to be in, and so it seems likely that Dame probably ends up in Miami. That's typically the way the NBA goes. A superstar player says, I want to end up here, and the team usually sends him there. But the problem is that Miami doesn't have the best package for a superstar player of Dame's caliber. They've got some interesting young players like Nikola Jovic, who I think is really, really intriguing. He just had a great summer league, showed some flashes when he got some run in this past season for the Heat, although that was very minimal, and he's still super young. He was just a first-round pick. So I do think that Jovic could be an interesting piece going forward to add to that Blazers front court. Jaime Jaquez Jr. was just taken in this past first round and looked pretty good in the summer league. I think he's going to be a lot better than people are saying. A lot of people called him a reach, but I think he's a perfect fit on a number of teams. I think he's going to be a great role player for a long time at the very least. And then Tyler Hero, who of course is kind of the Heat's main trade chip that they have at the moment. A young player who's just 23 years old. He's averaged over 20 points per game the past few seasons. Great three-point shooter. He was an integral piece to a finals run as a rookie back in 2020. Like, Tyler Hero is really good. And I think through all this discourse, Hero's kind of gotten underrated, partially because he wasn't a part of this past year's Heat finals run. So I think a lot of people are saying like, oh, how good can he be if the Heat still made the finals without him? It was a crazy run that the Heat went on. Like, their three-point shooting just burst onto the scene out of nowhere, and I think if they had Tyler Hero, they would have been better. Sure, the defense would have struggled a little bit with Hero coming into the lineup as opposed to some of the other players, but I think the offensive boost would have been big. If he had never hurt his hand, the Heat would have been in a better position. I truly think Tyler Hero's gotten kind of underrated, and he still is a really, really good young player who, again, is only 23. It feels like he's older than that because of how good he was back in his rookie season on that finals team, but, you know, he's still a couple years away from 25, and when most players hit their prime around 27 or 28, he's still like 4 or 5 years away from that. Plus, he's locked up on a long-term contract, so overall, I don't think he's that bad of a trade chip. However, the problem is that the Blazers apparently aren't really interested in Tyler Hero. Now, there are some understandable reasons why. Number one, he is getting paid like $30 million-ish a year. Like I said, he's on that long-term deal. And with the Blazers just starting this rebuild, they probably don't want to commit that much money in long-term commitment to a new guy in Tyler Hero who they don't even know if they're going to want as part of their future going forward. Plus, they kind of already have some talent at the position that he would play for them. They've got Scoot, who's going to play that one spot, and then alongside him, you've got Simons, who I feel like is on a similar tier of player to Tyler Hero. They're both high output scoring guards with not a ton of defensive chops. So I don't really think they're looking for another type of basically the same archetype of player to bring onto the team at this point when they've already got a lot of money tied up in Simons at this moment. They've got Shaedon Sharpe who can kind of play that 3 and 2 as well. So Hero just doesn't seem super interesting to the Blazers at this point. And if he's not interesting, then Miami really doesn't have a great package for you. Again, Hero is kind of their main trade chip, while Jaquez and Jovic are interesting and they do have some first round picks. Outside of that, it's just like salary filler type of players like Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, who, each have a little bit of value, but neither of them have much value to a Blazers team that's trying to start from scratch. So overall, it's just not a great package for a team like the Blazers. If they're not interested in Hero, you're not going to be towards the top of the list. Plus, we talk about some of the other teams that I mentioned before, whose names have been mentioned at one point or another in potential Dame trade talks. Philly, they've got Tyrese Maxey, who is also a guard, so that's kind of a weird spot there with them having Scoot Henderson, but his role is a little bit different, so I could see them preferring Maxey over Hero, and the Sixers do also have some first-round picks. Brooklyn, if they'd be willing to trade like a Nick Claxton, a big of the future type of player. Any number of other guys over there too. They're not going to include Mikal Bridges in that type of deal, but I think a guy like Nick Claxton could be interesting, as well as a couple of other young guys on that roster, and they too have some first-round picks to offer up from like Phoenix. Those picks could be really valuable down the line, some from Philadelphia in the James Harden trade. The Knicks have a bunch of interesting young talent and some picks. Quentin Grimes, RJ Barrett, just a number of guys over there, Emmanuel Quickley. The Utah Jazz have a billion first-round picks too, and some young talent. Like, all these destinations, I would say, probably have better packages at this point than Miami. So it would make sense that the Blazers would try and look at other destinations than Miami to send Dame to, if he's okay with that. However, that's where the big problem comes up, where Dame only wants to go to Miami. It's not just that he prefers it from, like, straight from his agent's mouth. Dame wants to be in Miami. There's been rumors saying that if he doesn't end up in Miami, he'll sit out and he won't come to training camp, which I don't think Dame does. He just doesn't seem like that type of player. I think he'll report to training camp and play for whoever's there. I think if the Blazers don't trade him by the time the season rolls around, I think he would show up and play for the Blazers, even though he's made it known that he wants to be traded. And it does feel like eventually, again, he'll end up in Miami because that's where star players usually go, is their preferred destinations. But things are up in the air. Again, Dame's agent putting out statements saying that Miami's the place he wants to be, all these other rumors, while meanwhile the Blazers front office, Joe Cronin, is basically explicitly saying that we're okay if this thing takes weeks, takes months, we're going to get the best offer and prioritize the package over bending to Dame's wishes. Even if he really wants to go to Miami, if we don't like that package, we're not going to send him there. But another problem is that, according to other reports, the Blazers are basically begging teams to make offers to them for Damian Lillard. They're not getting that much interest. This is somewhat surprising because Dame is really good, but it makes a bit more sense when you think about his age. He's getting up there. He's around, I think, 33 at this point. He's also making $60 million for the next few years, which is tough to stomach with the new CBA, the second luxury tax apron that severely limits your ability to build a team. If you add $60 million for a single player into that, that's really difficult to build a true contender if you're not already there when you pick up Dame. There's also the fact that if he truly only wants to be in Miami, if you're any other team, you're going to be giving up a ton of assets to bring in a guy who you're hoping to be probably your franchise player, if not like your 2 option on a team, depending on where he goes. But he doesn't want to be there potentially. Like, do you really want to give up all those assets for a disgruntled superstar off the bat? It's not even like you trade for him and after a year or two, he's like, okay, I don't know about this. From day one, you know that you're not his preferred destination. And eventually, you can probably convince him that this is the spot he should be, a spot where he can compete for titles. But if he truly wants to be in Miami, what's stopping him from again trying to request a trade in like a year and just leaving you straight up to go to the Miami Heat, or eventually maybe even refusing to play? I don't think Dame would do that again, but there is a risk with trading for a disgruntled superstar. And even if like he comes in and plays, if he's visibly unhappy, if he doesn't want to be there, even if you're competing, that could also do some damage to your locker room. So are you really going to give up basically the entire war chest of assets for a player who doesn't want to be there? So it makes sense that the Blazers aren't getting many trade offers, and this puts everything at a standstill. Dame only wants to go to Miami, but Miami's trade package isn't great. The Blazers are being like, hey, other teams, please make offers, but everybody's like, no, Dame wants to go to Miami. Why are we going to give up all this stuff when that's the spot that he wants to be? He's a getting up there in age point guard making $60 million. Now we're going to pass. So we're just at this point where the Heat are like, okay, we don't have many people we're competing with. This is our package. And the Blazers are saying, we don't like that package. So basically nothing is happening at this point. Although despite the fact that there's really no movement whatsoever, we keep getting more and more rumors talking about potential other destinations, potential frameworks for deals, teams that are popping up as maybe a third destination that could take on Tyler Hero because the Blazers don't seem to want him. And ultimately, I think that's probably the way this thing gets done, is that Hero goes to a third team. The Heat send some assets. Maybe they trade a couple more guys to bring in first-round picks. Caleb Martin is rumored to potentially be on the market for a first-round pick that the Heat can use in a Dame trade to further entice the Blazers to accept their offer. So maybe they trade a guy or two to bring in some more picks. Hero goes to a third team. They deal some salary filler over to the Blazers, and this thing finally gets done. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it happens sooner than later, but again, like I mentioned earlier in the video, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing drags all the way out to training camp. And of course, people on Twitter, as always, have a bunch of different takes about what the Blazers should do. There's one group of people that says that the Blazers should take the Heat's offer because that's where Dame wants to go. He's been loyal to them for so many years and is arguably the best player in franchise history. He's given them two of the most renowned playoff buzzer beaters of all time. He led them to a Western Conference Finals. You know, he's an NBA 75 player that solely played for the franchise, gave them all-star appearances, all-NBA appearances, you know, been an MVP caliber player some seasons, even if he didn't win the award because the team wasn't good enough. Dame's been amazing for them, so they should just do right by Damian Lillard and send him to Miami. A lot of people in this camp are also saying that if they don't trade Dame to the Heat, that they're going to deter future stars from wanting to join the Blazers. I just don't think that's the case. I mean, it's Portland, first of all. Like, it's not a big name market. Stars aren't typically going to join the Blazers anyways. The way that they're going to build this team is through trades or through the draft. They've already got Scoot, they've got Shaedon Sharpe, they've got Anthony Simons. Those three guys could all be big pieces for the future, and they're already here. I don't think they're going to see them trade Dame to a team that's not Miami and say, hey, I want out too because I don't like the way that you did Damian Lillard. I just don't see that being that much of an issue. I think people are looking a bit too much into that when they're making this argument. Of course, there's also the other side where people are saying that the Blazers have no obligation to trade him specifically to Miami if there is a better package out there because they paid him millions and millions of dollars. Like I said, he's making $60 million for the next few seasons, and that they did what they could to build around him, even though they didn't do a very good job of putting talent around Dame consistently. And me personally, I understand where both sides are coming from. I think it would be cool if they help Dame get to where he wants to go, but at the same time, I don't think they should sacrifice, you know, a better start to their rebuild just to send Dame over to the Miami Heat. If they like the package, maybe a little bit less than another one, I think it'd be cool if they just sent Dame to Miami anyways, because again, that's where he wants to go. One of the best players in your franchise history, and overall, that would make him happy, and probably a lot of Blazers fans would be happy to see Dame go to a spot where he can compete for a championship and a destination where ultimately he wants to go. But if you hate the package, if a team like just randomly, let's go with the Pelicans, is like, hey, we'll give you a few picks in Zion or something like that, take that offer. Even though New Orleans isn't the place that Dame wants to end up, don't sacrifice an incredible start to your rebuild, potentially like a way better package, just to send him to Miami. I think if it's close, like if there's a package that they like a little bit better, but it's not Miami, then take the Heat's package. But if there's a destination that's giving you something significantly more substantial than what the Heat are offering, just take that. Of course, this even being a conversation depends on if they get more offers. Again, it sounds like the Heat are really the only team that has a significant offer out there. There's been rumors of other teams being somewhat interested, but as I mentioned earlier, I don't know if any offers have actually popped up at this point. So it seems like we're in for a long back and forth between the Heat, between the Blazers, between Dame, the front office, his agent, you know, fans on both sides of the equation. I just don't know. I'm kind of sick of it. I thought I was sick of the Dame, you know, will he request a trade? Won't he? Won't run from the grind type of stuff. I thought I was sick of that. I'm even more sick of it now. The only reason I'm making this video is because I haven't made a video talking about the Dame situation since the trade request first happened, so I felt like I should give a bit of an update and share some of my opinions on the situation, which are, one, like I mentioned, if there's a package that's way better than the Heat's, just take that even if it's not where he wants to go, and also, I just want this trade to happen. Again, I think it's probably going to drag out for a few months, maybe into the season, into training camp, which really isn't ideal for either side. The Blazers want to move on from this situation, start their rebuild. Dame wants to probably go into training camp with a new team already and get an offseason to prep for what he hopes to be finally his championship run. Like, this is not ideal for either side, and maybe that ends up causing a trade to happen sooner than later. But I just don't know. The Blazers front office, Joe Cronin, their GM, seems really, really hell-bent on trying to get the most value possible, which again, does make sense when you're trading one of the greatest players in franchise history, still a top 10 player in the league, who arguably just had his best offensive season of all time. I completely understand trying to get a absolutely ridiculous haul for a player like that. We'll see if it ends up actually happening. Eventually, I think it will get done with him going to Miami, because that's just typically the way superstar trades happen, but it might take a while. We're going to get a ton more nothing rumors, a ton of reporting that's literally telling us nothing that we haven't already heard before, just the same stuff that we heard kind of with the whole will Dame request a trade type scenario that we got before the request actually happened. I just hope when Dame gets traded, we don't have to hear anything else about Dame trade requests, like, for the rest of his career. I hope wherever he lands, he sticks there for the rest of his career. He gets a chance to compete. Again, I think it would be super fun to see him in Miami. That's where he probably ends up. But for now, we're left to speculate, refresh our Twitter timelines, and just chill out in this part of the offseason where not much is happening outside of the end of Summer League right now. But once that wraps, there's going to be nothing to do but scroll Twitter and wait for more trade requests or trades or rumors to pop up. So it might even get worse from here. We'll see. But yeah, let me know your opinion on the Damian Lillard situation in the comments below. Do you think the Blazers should trade him to Miami even if they don't like the package as much? Do you agree with my take? Do you think they should just go ahead and take the best offer regardless of if it's close to the Heat's offer in general? Where do you think he lands? What are some of your favorite landing spots for him outside of the Heat? Because we've talked about that one to death. But yeah, I appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.